Hello and welcome back to the show. In today's video, we are going to be checking out two different cameras for you. Those are the mirrorless and the M6 Mark 1 and Mark 2. Guess which one is the 2, which one is the 1. So this is the part 1, this is part 2. They came out about 2 years after another. And the biggest question is, first, should you even get a mirrorless camera? And 2, should you get part 2 or part 1 of this camera version? So what is mirrorless and why it is so much superior than one without the mirror? So the mirrorless cameras, they don't have the DSLR component in it. So when you take a picture, there is no mirror, which means it's all digital. And because of that, it makes the form factor of it much smaller. So it has specialized lenses, but the good thing is, see how small this thing is? Its size really matters when it comes to photography. And when you travel, having a huge camera is just a burden on you when you go to places. So the M camera, this came out, there's a bunch of different versions that this came out with. And I believe this is maybe the 6th version of those cameras. There's actually different kind of versions. That's why it's probably called M6. And this is the best one. This is actually the part 1. So it's not the best one because there is a better one, which is part 2. But you have to understand that I think with part 2 was the last version that they come up with this. And the reason why it's pretty simple. Because there is no more people really interested in those cameras as much, because they either get the DSLR or they actually get a smartphone. Which brings us to the question, do you even need one of those cameras instead of using a smartphone? So I'm going to be showing you a few things that this can do that it can't, anything else you can't do it with. So it has an ability to swap the lenses out of it. And you can't do this with a smartphone. And you can put a lot of different lenses. So this one has a lot of M lenses, which is much smaller. And they're very handy as well. So that's a good thing about this. Now, the next thing that I like about this is that it has a lot of controls in here that you don't have in a DSLR. And if you want to shoot sports or fast action, it's not something you can do with a smartphone either. And also you can have a selfie screen where you can see yourself, or even use this to take different kind of pictures in various amount of angles. Furthermore, it has a powerful built-in flash. And even more than that, you can put your own flash, much bigger and better flash, right about here. So there's a lot of positives why you should own one of those mirrorless cameras. Now, when it comes to different kind of versions and why you should get part 1 or part 2, it comes down to a few factors. One is the cost. So part 1 is much cheaper than part 2. On the other hand, part 2 gives you much more advanced and better grip. Much more better kind of a body, and it has a lot more of those things here. You can see right here the grip is much more superior than in this one, which has not, the grip is not all around it. So that's one of the few things about this that is already right off the box. You can see the difference in here. And plus the camera body is a little bit more wide, so when you hold this, the part 2, it's much easier for you to hold this. But at the same time, the problem is it's a little bit more heavy. So this one is a little bit more lighter, just a little bit, and much more compact as well. And you're saving about $100 to $200 by getting the part 1 version. Apart from that, the controls over here, this one has a lot more manual controls in the dials section. And this one has a function dial right here, where you can program a lot of things in here. So it gives you a lot more opportunities for you to do different things, and it even has a manual or autofocus over here, like a switch, which is much better than in a different one over there. So pretty much there's a lot of small different incrementals that the 2 is much better than the version 1, but it is really small. But if you want to get the best camera that you can afford and the best of the M Canon lineup, then 2 is really a no-brainer. Part 1 is really decent as well, so Part 1 is good too, and you're not losing this much, except that when you're taking videos and camera do auto pixel focus, which is available on the M6 Mark II. Another thing about the M6 Mark II is its ability to focus when you're taking specific shots as well. So the focus is much better, and it has multiple points where it focuses on. So definitely this gives you a lot of better money for your buck as well, and it is 2 years newer, and it has a better processor too. So that being said, both of the M cameras are pretty good. Either one of those is going to be good for fashion and portrait and nature photography. When it comes to wedding photography or stuff like that, this is not good enough yet. It doesn't have the same kind of aperture to this. So when you take pictures, the aperture is not as good. And because of that, pictures come up a little bit on the dark side, or you can get a special lens like the one I have over here, which is a 1.4 millimeter prime. And this one is 32 millimeter over here. So this gives you really good image quality, but in very small size package. And that is very important when it comes to photography. And I really like it too, because you have a small camera that you can take with you and take pictures, and you can do video as well, and it has 4K built in to here. And I do like it because when you compare this to a smartphone, you have to understand that with a smartphone it's hard for you to do videos and pictures, especially when something is moving. And with this, you can see right here with shakiness and everything, it's really hard for you to hold this. And that's one thing that you cannot beat with an actual DSLR or compact mirrorless camera. You can't beat this, that you can grip it and you can hold it with your hand very stable. And you can even use a good tripod to get the amazing images that you always wanted. So this is something for you to keep in mind when you're getting those. When it comes to M6 or M6 II, either one of those is going to be very good. It really depends on your budget and how serious you are about photography. So up close and personal, I wanted to show you the biggest difference between both of those cameras. So over here, you can see the grip in the first edition is not as good when you are actually touching it. So this is small for most people. It doesn't make that much of a difference, but if you're a pro photographer, you're going to be holding this for quite some time. This grip is lacking. Also, what is lacking is the size here. Look how small this thing is in my hands. It's very small. Now, this could be a plus or minus, but there was just not enough grip here when you're grabbing this. Now, when it comes to other features of this camera, you can also see the following here. Right at the top here is where the biggest difference actually comes. So this one has a wheel of plus and minus here, and on the other side there is a secondary wheel here. And I really like this feature, and this is a feature that is missing in part 2, but it is totally included in part 1. Everything else here is pretty much almost identical as well. When it comes to where it is made, I have to lift this up and to take a look. This one is made in Japan. Now to take the part 2 here, which is very similar to part 1, The part 2 gives you much better grip. As you can see with my hands, this is more natural for me to grip it as well. And also the texture of the material is much more smooth and much more better made too. So when you're gripping this, it gives you a much better grip. On the top here, there is only one wheel on this side, but there is a function button that gives you different options that is not available on part 1. So this is an extra button that you're getting, but it is missing the dial, so that's one thing that you're not getting. A few other things that are different between both of them, which is primarily this. Opening this up, and this is made, surprise surprise, also made in Japan, which is really good. Almost all the Canons, the first time they make them, and after that, most of the time they stay made in Japan. Sometimes they do send them to China, so you have to always take a look in the back to double check and to see. One more thing, right here is the manual and autofocus switch that is only available on part 2. Part 1 doesn't have it. And for those of you who want to know right away if this is part 1 or part 2, the way you can easily tell is right here, the saying where it says Mark M6 Mark II right there. Pretty much those are the biggest and the bigger differences that are available between both of those. When you turn them on, the menu in itself is much more different as well. So you get a much better and more clear organization and menu here than in part 1. So this one is a little bit more options for you that you don't actually get in part 1, which is a good thing as well. So in case you are done here and pretty much you are still on the fence, right, to decide which Canon is the one should you be getting, part 1 or part 2, I'm gonna try to help you out here. So part 1 version is much more simple, it is much more cheaper, and it has this silver lining on the top here, whereas this one has the black lining here. But pretty much it comes down to two different factors. One is how professional are you, and two is the price. So if money is no matter, get the 2. If you want to save a little bit of money, get the 1. If you're a professional and you want the best M6 mirrorless Canon that actually made, then get the part 2, because that's the latest one that they have and the best one that they have, and it's even better than the M51. That being said, there's not much differences between those two, and it doesn't really justify upgrading to part 2, especially if you're already coming from part 1. So it's up to you to decide which one is better for you. The best way for you to know is to get your hands on both of them. But pretty much right now, just get the best one for your photography needs. If you're not a professional, part 1 is better. It's going to save you money. If you're a pro, you need the latest, you need the best kind of action, and you're specifically shooting a lot of videos, then part 2 is the no-brainer and the one for you to get. Of course, the best thing for you to do is, if you did enjoy the show, smash the thumbs up button, subscribe to this channel, and see you in the next video, where you never know what is the next thing that's coming on this channel.